Breaking news out of the NFL, where the Las Vegas Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce after his first full season with the team. That's our latest from Jonathan Jones. The Raiders won just 4 games this season, their fewest since 2018. Las Vegas also missed the playoffs for their 3rd straight year.
And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of The Signal Caller. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Solo Lopez, the Solo Lopez, on Instagram, on Twitter. So check him out there. He's back now. He after one day of hiatus.
I was a lapsed Raider fan for about 12 hours.
Once they, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
You can't keep getting away with it.
And mine is POR. SBR is my Twitter handle, so reach me there, and also on Blue Sky as well. You can reach me there as well too, and on Instagram. Put on waivers _podcast. So you can meet me there. So the Raiders did a thing today. The autumn wind blew Antonio Pierce out of the head coaching position. Just want to hear your thoughts about it. This is more of a quarterback show, but obviously the head coach has a big effect on the quarterback and everything like that. But I think basically this was a situation where he was just flat out in a situation where the job was just too big. It was too big. He didn't have enough experience, and as many guys as he brought around him, the Philmans, the
Marvin Lewis,
people like that. It just wasn't enough to cover up his warts.
Well, I would say first and foremost, did he even hire anybody from a contemporary team, from a modern system, from a modern NFL contemporary system? I mean, it didn't seem like he hired anybody that had any kind of modern, take on the NFL. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that he ran into. Is that not only did he not get any of the details correct in terms of the minutia of coaching, I felt like not only was he in over his head in that regard, I don't even think he understood he needed to have some type of plan for practices, for offensive game planning, defensive game planning, execution. The staff members of the of all of the team. It's not a big surprise that the only person that's getting interview candidate jobs is Patrick Graham, and Pierce had nothing to do with his hiring or his development as a coach. So it was necessary. He was in over his head. He basically, if you want to be a CEO coach and you want to compare it to the other great CEO coaches in the NFL, you have to do the small things right in order to do, which is staff, game management, clock management, game situational awareness, and he had none of that. And to make it all worse, the Instagram stuff and the podium behavior just made it 100 times worse. I mean, literally, it was just that much worse of reflecting on him when he was at the podium, contradicting himself over certain things, contradicting himself over the quarterback situation, over the Devontae Adams situation, all of these situations. He literally just did this 2 weeks ago where he said he thinks Aiden O'Connell is the starting quarterback in the NFL. And then on the eve before he's fired said, well, it's clear and obvious what we need. It's been clear all year, which is alluding to the quarterback position. So you either think Aiden O'Connell is the starting quarterback, or the most glaring and obvious position of need for the Raiders is quarterback. Both those things can't be true. And then you use that as a scapegoat on the eve of your last presser as the NFL head coach. It's just a myriad of things that he just was not qualified for. He's one of the worst head coaching hires in the history of the Raiders franchise. I think he's on the Mount Rushmore with Joe Bugle, Dennis Allen, and Josh McDaniels as the 4 worst coaches that they've ever hired. Now, a lot of people will argue Art Shell 2.0, but I think that was a situation where Al Davis had literally nobody else to turn to. and he wanted to amend his mistake in the 90s by firing Art Shell. But I think those 4 guys are the worst. And just from top to bottom, there was nothing competent about him whatsoever. Beating a bunch of backups like we talked about, everything that we talked about in the offseason leading up to this, about how hard the schedule was going to be, how many first-round quarterbacks they were going to face, how tough the division was going to be, how good the Broncos and the Chargers were going to be if they got everything correct in terms of the quarterback play and the coaching. And it just became this mess. The Raiders have nothing else. They're just not qualified and competent when top to bottom you have Antonio Pierce and the combination of him with Minshew, Ritter, or O'Connell. It was a mess from top to bottom.
And I mean, before I really push back really hard on people who try to act like and say that this team had no talent at the beginning of the season. That is a fallacy. That is a lie. Somebody tweeted out something about how was he supposed to make sugar out of shit. I'm like, my guy, like, this was really not the worst talent. This wasn't the least talented team in football. Like it really wasn't one of those situations. Did he get unlucky? The only spot where he got unlucky is you lose Wilkins and Kuntz. That was unlucky, but like they found some pass rush in other areas. So
yeah,
it really wasn't that bad as far as that goes. And then look at what they did early in the season. And like we're guys who are like Gardner Minshew as far as like a backup or just a fill-in quarterback. He played his absolute worst football under your tutelage
in his career.
In his career, he at least was competitive, serviceable. I mean, can get you if he plays the whole season, get you 7 to 9 wins. He almost got the Colts into the playoffs last year, starting that entire season. But then he couldn't get it done. He also didn't have like a network. Like he wasn't in the league long enough to get quality people to build a staff. And that really was something that that kind of plagued him as well. And I think it was pretty telling. And it probably just really pissed off Patrick Graham that Patrick Graham put in all this work for all these years. And because he was a rah-rah, yell Raiders kind of guy, he got the job over Patrick Graham. And I think at that point they should have hired Patrick Graham to really stabilize what they wanted to do. So you mentioned the staff. He kind of just like promoted people from like he kind of stayed with people who were within the circles of the Raiders. He didn't go out and get anybody big because he didn't know anybody big. And then as far as Cliff Kingsbury goes, obviously I wouldn't expect him to move his family, or I don't know if he has a family, but move himself to Vegas for 2 years. I mean, it's a standard 3-year deal. AP should have stood on a 3-year deal because the way the Raiders were set up last year, they weren't going to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
So he should have said, okay, 2 years. All right, let me know when you guys are ready for 3 years, and I'll come back. I guarantee they would have gave him the 3rd year, but he was so desperate for a job, he took it. I don't want to make the whole show about hammering AP. He did what he could do. He wasn't great for the job. He wasn't longing for the job. So I think it's time to kind of move on and go on to the other candidates. I did want to drop a quick line because of the state of California. Solid blessings and wishes to the folks in the Pacific Palisades and Malibu right now. The fires are like the wildfires are going crazy over there right now. It looks pretty bad right now. So I hope people got out before anybody got hurt or killed in that incident. But thoughts about the next steps for the Raiders now. We'll talk about Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Talk about Tom Brady real quick. How do you feel about this is a situation again where a person's in charge who does not really have executive experience?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, neither does Mark Davis, and we've seen the fruits of that catastrophic
He
failure
doesn't.
over the last.
I didn't notice the last 20 years.
You didn't see how since 2011 the Raiders have been kind of a
Yeah,
mess.
yeah.
No, honestly, at the very bare minimum, Tom Brady knows what he needs, knows what he needed in his career to win. And I think bare minimum, he knows football, and he has a ton of relationships across the NFL at the bare minimum. For years, we've talked about the Raiders need a president of football operations. They need someone in between the general manager and the coach, in between them and the owner. You need one guy reporting to the owner who doesn't have to look over his shoulder every 5 days or every 2 years that you're going to fire this guy. Like Tom Brady's a perfect guy because you can't fire him as an owner. So if you're going to make him de facto president of football operations, he has the latitude to use his extensive experience to as a player and as being around the game and being the GOAT, the greatest player of all the greatest quarterback in the history of football, in order to foster a culture and an organization that from top to bottom is not an infantile, because that's what it is. It's been just a horrendous show from top to bottom for the better part of 2.5 decades. And this just one bad move, one bad decision, one impulsive bad decision after another. And for all his faults, Mark Davis has at least tried to get it right. It's just, it hasn't gone right. I think the very first move he ever made as owner was the right one. Was that he fired Hugh Jackson and he hired Reggie McKenzie. I think where he went wrong is when he got impulsive and trying to lure the big fish John Gruden out of retirement, and he basically didn't give Reggie McKenzie an opportunity to continue sustaining and building his the team and in his vision. He had the right idea. He drafted a quarterback really high, in the first 40 picks of the draft. He solidified the offensive line. He solidified the defensive line. So he had the right vision of how to bring a modern, successful team into the NFL. But he was, 40, 60 in terms of his success and failures as a drafting. And he struck out with Dennis Allen as his first coach. And Jack Del Rio was more of a Mark Davis hire. So I think that Mark Davis has tried to get it right, but he just doesn't know how. He's limited in his capacity to actually know what the right move is. And so having a de facto president of football operations that can make these decisions, have it fall back on him, knowing you don't have to fire this guy ever because you can't, I think that's the right move. And Mark should just sit back for the rest of his life and collect the fat, gigantic paychecks that he's going to be getting as the principal owner for the team and just ride off into the sunset and let Tom Brady handle this from here on out. It's just the right thing to do. And I think that he's a grown up in an organization that has been very childish for the better part of 2.5 decades. And I think the next step is to allow Tom Brady and Telesco to do what's needed, to bring an adult into the room and a guy who actually knows what he's doing in terms of a qualified candidate, a head coach, have an extensive, exhaustive search for a head coach. It's not something they've done over the last 3 head coaches they've hired. It's been, I want John Gruden, Jack Del Rio, you're gone. John Gruden is forced to resign. I want Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler because they come from the Patriots. I want Antonio Pierce because the players want him, and I'm not even going to conduct an interview search. These are all gigantic mistakes. And so let someone else make the decision on doing an exhaustive search. Let someone come in. You already have a general manager who's had one successful draft. Let him continue to build on that, even though he had what could arguably be a horrible free agency, notwithstanding to the injury for Christian Wilkins. You got to just keep going and keep building with the adults in the room versus acting on impulse and hiring Antonio Pierce, who couldn't be less qualified to be a head coach. The only person that was less qualified, I would argue, is Jeff Saturday in the history of pro football to have a head coaching job for any amount of time. And even though that was an interim coach, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. You can't act petulant and childish when you're in charge of an organization like this. You have to have a grown up in the room. And I think Tom Brady's that grown up.
Yeah, no question about it. So hopefully that takes place. And then, he'll sit back and look at the situation and try to, hopefully get the quarterback and get the head coach and We had the head coach in place. There are some candidates out there. I know that you like some. You got a list of guys who you wanted to kind of roll over real quick.
You got me?
I got you.
You got sound and video?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Did you hear what I said?
No, you cut out completely.
I'm
sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Tom Brady, we know about that. What are your thoughts about some of the candidates out there? It sounds like all the Vegas books have the Raiders getting Mike Vrabel. Listen, if Mike Vrabel takes this job, I give him a lot of credit because it's a tremendous leap of faith when you consider that the position out there in New England, even the Jaguars, might be when you look at the division, how weak it is,
Yeah.
and you have a quarterback or whatever. That quarterback is still probably better than or more physically talented than Ryan Tannehill, and
Sure.
he's dealt with that. You still got to deal with Bulky, but hey, the owner said right next to Trent, hey, if you give me a reason to fire him, I'll fire him. So which is like.
Which is an insane. I mean, what are these owners doing, man? These owners are just absurd, dude.
It is amazing. It's amazing how a lot of them are titans of business, but when it comes to this, they have no clue.
It's a whole. I don't know why it's so foreign to them. Like the inherited owners are so bad. And Shad Khan is not an inherited owner. He's a self-made owner that bought the Jaguars. But
yes.
It's just like these people have no concept of how to run an organization. But in terms of the candidates, I think Mike Vrabel is a foregone conclusion to go to the Patriots. I think that's over with. I think he's going to be. I think by Monday here, in a couple days after the weekend, I think Mike Vrabel is going to be announced as the Patriots head coach. I don't even think that's a question. They got there. Unfortunately, they got their Rooney Rule guys out of the way today, which sucks because that's not the point of the rule. But when you're making rush interviews like that, and you're interviewing two black candidates in the same day, it just doesn't look good. It's not a good look. And understandably, you just hired Gerard Mayo, and that was your handpicked successor, and none of that. But it just doesn't look good if they interview these two guys today, interview Mike Vrabel on Thursday, and then they hire Mike Vrabel on Friday. Like, that's not the point of the Rooney Rule, but it's their organization. They're going to get away with it because it's Bob Kraft. But I think that's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in terms of the other candidates that I think are more realistic, I'm a gigantic Brian Flores fan. That's my number one target. I don't think the Raiders have any legitimate shot at Ben Johnson. I think he's interviewing organizations for his talents, not the other way around. I think he's the most sought after coordinator in the entire of the NFL. He might be one of the most sought after coordinators of all time. It's so crazy to think about the last 3 years, how hot this guy has been on the offseason market. So he's going to be able to have his pick of the litter. So I think realistically, you look at guys like a Liam Cohen, an offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. You look at a guy like Evero, the defense coordinator from the Carolina Panthers, who I've liked for a long time, even dating back to his Denver days. I really like that guy a lot. I think he's a quality coach. He's good with the players. People love him. They don't have anything bad to say about him. And he takes these really risky jobs and he makes something out of it. And so that's a guy I really like. Obviously, Brian Flores, like I said, is my top choice. There's some reservation with him. I like Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator for Green Bay, a whole lot. So there's several different choices. I mean, if Vrabel does come and interview for the Raiders, he would be among my top 3 candidates. But I mean, I really, really like Liam Cohen. I really, really like Brian Flores as my number one choice. I think they need someone to come in and not take any crap from anybody. I think they need a guy that's going to come in and be like, this is my vision. Get me the players that I need here, and I will make it work. Like, you can't really name a ton of great players on that Minnesota defense, but he makes it work, man. He absolutely makes it work.
And when you have a blitzing defense like he does, the communication must be incredible on the way they do it. A really cool stat that Ryan brought up about the Tampa Bay Bucks last on the Put On Raiders podcast was the first team in NFL history to complete 70% of their passes and average 5 yards a carry. as a team.
Wow, really?
So 70% passing,
Shout out Bucky Irving.
and then and he helped me win a championship in fantasy football, by the way.
There
Bucky
you
Irvings.
go.
Shout out,
Yes, sir.
shout out, old Pac-12, old Pac-12. So and 5 yards of carry. So I do think, I mean, and Ryan also pointed out that, hey, listen, I know that Dave Canales was there as well, but I mean, still, I mean, it was there before, but I still think Cohen is. I mean, it could have went down with Cohen. You know what I mean?
It's
Because
not like he's calling up Dave Canales and asking him how to call this specific game. The guy's gone. He's the head coach of the Panthers. So
and
you have to. It's harder to be like, well, Dave Canales bears some responsibility, sure, for last year, but
yeah, and
Liam Cohen still has to go out there and do it. Look at the Todd Downing situation for the
he
Raiders.
does, and I think when I think it was Brian Leftwich, his his production, the Bucks production went down when he was there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And he also passed on opportunity to be a head coach. Now he's out of the league trying to get back in. So
Sure.
when the iron's hot, sometimes you gotta jump on it, even if you have to deal with a guy like Trent Baalke. What are your feelings about I know you talked about Flores. I do think I don't know how I feel about the Ryan Fitzpatrick comments. I feel like to a certain extent, it's like, okay, he's giving his experience with him, but it's also like, bro, like, let this dude be a head coach.
Yeah.
But part of me in my head is like, dude, like, I mean, let him be. I mean, like, let him do his due diligence and like whatever you're putting stuff out there. I mean, are you doing that for? I mean, there are things you can say about other candidates too as well that are negative. And he didn't really say anything that we don't know already, but he has kind of a bigger voice now because he is on the halftime show on Amazon Prime.
He has a major platform with the NFL.
Yes, he does right now.
To his credit, he did go under that video, that main video in that was shared of him, and said, I hope you go through the entirety of the process. I was just giving my experience. I like Brian Flores as a friend. I consider him a friend. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve an opportunity. This was the experience in Miami. However, I will say that everybody has an opportunity to grow. So he did go on to that video underneath in the comments to try to dispel the narrative that this is just him saying Brian Flores is a bad person or a bad coach. And, it's just certain things that I picked up in my experience. So I think he did it to his credit, tried to dispel that narrative right away. But it's hard on the internet, man. They'll clip you and then
they'll clip it, make it look. They'll clip it.
They'll clip it and say, "Hey, this is what he said." And to be fair, it is what he said. So, but I think that when you can have a 28-minute conversation be dialed down to a 2-minute clip and be like, "This is what he said about Brian Flores," he at least tried to go in there and be like, "No, this is it. This is I watched the whole thing. I also said this, and this." So. I don't put a lot of stock into it. I look at I'm so results based on what the Raiders need. And if Brian Flores was having winning seasons in a place like Miami where Chris Greer, the general manager, has some kind of stranglehold on the owner where he's able to be there for 15 plus years without winning a single playoff game and winning 2 division titles in that entire process, maybe less. I don't know what he's doing in that to be able to have and maintain that position. It's baffling to me. Just another really weird, ridiculous decision by a weird and ridiculous owner. But he had 2 winning seasons in a row when they fired him, and he didn't want any part of Tua. I don't blame him. We've seen the fruits of how that's come to pass. Mike McDaniel has won, I think, now less games than Brian Flores did, and in that run, or the winning percentage is close. I just think that in that regard, he might have been proven right in the long run. Whereas he doesn't want to tank, he wants to win games, and he's going to build the team in his vision based on where he's at. And he had to deal with Chris Greer as the general manager and Stephen Ross as the owner, who were really bad. So I get it. He probably is a dictator. He probably is a my way or the highway guy. But sometimes that's necessary, because if we had a my way or the highway guy last year, we probably wouldn't have hired Antonio Pierce. because Mark Davis was convinced by the players that this was the right move, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't. He was 24-25 with the with the Dolphins. So one game under 500.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think his predecessor Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel is 28-25 on his career.
Oh, okay. So there's a 4-game difference.
4-game difference, and he hasn't won a play, and he hasn't won a playoff game. So and came within the game. I mean, they've been both the Dolphins have fought for both. You could make an argument that the Dolphins have fought for both styles because they both were close to the playoff, or they both have close to 500 records.
Yeah,
Mike is a little bit over. Mike made the playoffs a couple of times and hasn't won it. As far as, let's see some other candidates here. So as far as the Rooney Rule thing, like to me, it's like, bro, like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, I mean, unless the league, if you leave it up to the league, they're gonna fast track who they want and never interview minority candidates.
I was thinking about this today. You know what would help with this is you offer compensation not just to the teams that are losing the minority candidates, but why don't you offer compensation to the teams that are actually hiring these guys at head coaching positions? Like, why don't some of these guys come with 3rd and 4th and 5th round picks? Then these guys might accidentally fall into a really, really great coach, as well as get extra compensation or extra compensatory picks for their next year's draft. This is what I don't understand. It's that you're not incentivizing hiring them. You're forcing them to interview. That's it. So it's like, if you incentivize hiring versus forcing to interview, you might see some change. I mean, the change is never going to come 100% because these owners are these owners. It's the good old boy system. It always has been. Billionaires are going to do what they want. They have the world, the world is their oyster, and we're all just living in it. And that's the way it's probably always going to be. But if you incentivized hiring minority candidates versus just forcing them to do so, to interview them, I think that you might see some little bit of a change. You have seen, the Niners got compensatory picks for Rand Carthon going to be the general manager through the diversity program that they're having in the NFL. So some of these guys are getting fast tracked, but then
they got it for Saleh. They got it for the Texans coach.
They got it for Mike McDaniel also.
Mike McDaniel as well too. So hey, listen. Hey, light skin brother.
His Thanksgiving photos are light. We'll just say that.
It's light. But hey, you know what I'm saying? But hey, I see this daddy. So you know what I'm saying? So hey, I mean, hey, sometimes it comes out that way. But
I like Mike McDaniel a lot, by the way. I hope he gets a fair shot in Miami more so than he has been. I really like Mike
think they
McDaniel.
Like him too. So I would say maybe a couple more seasons for him there. But
they were quick to say Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel are coming back. Like we're not even entertaining that right now.
We should I really want to go to a seminar with Trent Baalke and Chris Greer, because man, they survived, dude.
No doubt.
They survived. Those two dudes survived. Man. They survived.
Gracious.
They survived. I don't know how they do it, but they survived.
Chris Greer is the one that really baffles me. That guy must be like, he either has some monumental dirt on Stephen Ross, or that's his best friend in the whole world, and he has breakfast with him every Sunday or something. Like, there's some kind of connection tradition between those two, because to be the general manager of a place for that long and not have any success that you can point to, and really not a whole lot of success. I mean, would Miami rather have Tua right now, or would they rather have Justin Herbert? I think it's pretty clear and obvious who they'd rather have. Like, just decisions like that are so daunting to the long-term outlook of those. And then worst of all, you haven't won a playoff game, and you've won like 1 or 2 division titles in your whole career there. I just don't understand it. I can't fathom how a guy stays on that long.
I would also say to a couple of names that are not popping up right now. One is Cliff Kingsbury. I think that he's definitely changed and gotten better. As far as because usually he had the Gruden effect where his offense started off really quickly, and then as the season went on, it fizzled and went away. I think he's gotten better, and I think there was an interview and I wanted to play it, but I don't. But I didn't have time to look it up. I'll play it on a later show. He talked about his experience working with Dan Quinn and how Dan Quinn set up everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like basically like this is how it's gonna be, this is what we're gonna do, bang, bang, bang. We're not gonna there are some non-negotiable things that we're gonna be about. And he said it's hard to do that later on. And he was very and Cliff was very open about like, I mean, if I get another opportunity, I'll make sure I'll handle it much better than when I was with it.
Yeah.
With Arizona, he was kind of really open about it. So I kind of appreciate that, and I also think that Jesse Minter as well. The Chargers
Big
have had,
name.
yeah,
Big name.
yeah. The Chargers have had a number one defense in the league this year. I think that for me, I know Minter. I know people want to wait for the right job, but if Minter gets an opportunity, like I said, if you're Jesse Minter and like some of these guys, if you get an opportunity, I'm telling you, man, like go take it. Go take it. It's only 1 of 32. It's not like it's not like being an accountant where you can be an accountant anywhere in the world. It's 1 million bazillion accountants. There's not a gazillion head coaches in National Football League. So I would say
I think
that
Jesse Minter would be absolutely perfect for New Orleans because they would give him the latitude to be successful, the latitude to be able to make the connection. They have some major cap issues that they have to deal with. They have the Derek Carr situation there, but I think if Minter I don't think the Saints are going to be a very high desirable job, but I think that they've shown that they will be patient with people. Like if you give Dennis Allen that amount of time to do that, and he's never been a good coach ever, basically. It's hard to fathom that they wouldn't give a really highly qualified modern guy an opportunity. That would be a perfect fit for me, in my opinion.
I would say this too, real quick too. On the Saints job, I think Aaron Glenn might be a Saint or a Jet.
That's another one. Yeah.
So, and I think it's interesting because one of his players got interviewed on Sirius satellite radio today, and I was listening to that interview, and he said that the one thing people don't realize about Aaron Glenn is that he started his career after football as a scout.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Before he became a coach. And I thought that was actually pretty interesting that his own player brought it up. And I thought that was actually pretty cool that like his players kind of knew his background and like kind of talked about I thought it was really cool. And I think that's an interesting caveat when he does go interview. So that's something to think about as well. And I think one thing I did want to say, and I know, listen, I'm not going to shy away from Derek Carr shade, but I got to say that it's pretty disgusting to not take a pay cut to help that team. Yeah. I mean, that is the most. I mean, that is like they
restructured him like 2 years ago to put money in the future.
Yeah.
For him. Now that they desperately need it. Look, that team. That's their own doing. Mickey Loomis' own doing by they've restructured half their team into the future, so their cap problems are their own. Yeah. But Derek Carr done nothing to help them win. Not one thing. He's done absolutely nothing to help them win. They have the easiest schedule in the entire NFL 2 years in a row. They have the worst division in football, and they've missed the playoffs both times. And Derek Carr hasn't finished either season healthy. So, I mean, or no, he hasn't played an entire season yet for the Saints. So he's breaking down. Yeah. It's clearly his ability has been questioned basically his whole career. For good reason. We see the results of that, and not taking a pay cut. Yikes!
Like seriously. Well, one thing we know, he may not be serious about winning, but he's serious about his money.
No doubt,
and he always gets it. So, let's see here. We got Benja. I mean, I think that the Bear. I mean, I think the Patriots have already fulfilled the Rooney Rule, but I think the league. The reason why the league is going to say, you can hire your coach after the playoffs, the first round of the playoffs.
You think they'll hire him after the playoffs?
I do think that. I do.
Wow.
I think that, and we'll see tomorrow. We'll see. By the time the show comes out.
You mean like after the Super Bowl?
No. After the first round.
Oh, okay, yeah.
After wild card weekend. After
Yeah,
wild card
we'll
weekend.
see. We'll see all the hires basically. Well, I think 99% of the hires will be done in 2 weeks. I really do. Like
Yeah.
it's generally the end of like right around the middle to the 20, like the 18th to like the 27th is when generally all the coaches get hired. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. I think 100%. Because I think the league wants to show a process. I don't know if the league could do something like this where you could have the list like your Rooney Rule people have to be people who are actively in the league.
Yeah.
Or they give a list of teams and say, hey, these are the guys who you should go for. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously,
You mean Chris Richard and Leslie Frazier are not good quality interview candidates?
One of our favorites is Winston Moss. Is Winston Moss?
Yes, the Winston Moss
Winston
one.
Moss?
Well, we got Winston. We already got half our minority Rooney Rule can't fulfilling right there.
But I mean,
their interview goes as follows: "How you doing, Winston? I'm good. Okay, thanks for coming in."
Seriously, and I would say like
What
I
a
don't want.
joke.
Yeah, I don't want. I don't want the. I don't. I think it's disingenuous to have the Pep Hamiltons, to have the a guy like Brian Leftwich should be probably coming in as a coordinator, not necessarily a head coach. But I think like it would give more validity to it, like you know what I'm saying, because they're active guys who are in the league right now. I think a guy like Salah, who's interviewing with the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's something where like okay, he just got fired, this year. He wants to get back in. It makes sense. I mean, like it makes sense. It is a minority, and then the team actually got worse after he left. So I could see a team saying, "Hey, let's kick the tires and see." He probably got stuck in a bad situation with an aging quarterback who is an enigma, if you will. As far as that goes,
He is. He is an
is.
enigma.
He's a good number, no question about it. Anything else on the Raiders search? I mean, well, I would say this: even if they, I know, I think Josina Anderson talked about two candidates. I do want to see again. We just love to see full searches here on the Sydney caller. We've not had one in a long time.
We only want to see full searches.
Yeah,
we only want.
Yes, I mean, it should be a bunch of guys. Like let's get that popping and let's get that thing going, because I don't want to see like, even if it is just you may know who you want, but like let's like you never know. Like
there was quite literally no harm in interviewing coaches last year.
No,
there's none. Yeah. When you have a pool of Mike Vrabel, and remember, Mike Vrabel could have been the coach of the Raiders already. He could have been the coach of the Raiders last year.
Yes.
He did not coach for any team last year. So you could have literally had the single top candidate outside of Ben Johnson of this hiring pool on your team right now. And you're no better off now by hiring Antonio Pierce. In fact, you're much worse off because your candidacy now is even lower of the bar in terms of the relevance to the league, because you don't have a quarterback and you don't have a pick as of right now that gets you a quarterback in that regard. Now you could luck into one. We could see one of these guys fall. We could see Drew Allar maybe possibly declaring or redeclaring in that regard, as opposed to coming back like he already said he was going to. You could see a myriad of different things that happen. But as of right now, it's just not a desirable place. They're just really bad. They're just a really bad organization top to bottom. And when you're a really bad organization top to bottom and you also don't have a quarterback, you're at the bottom of everybody's list. At least the Giants have an opportunity. The Giants have proven that they'll take a first-round quarterback. All these other teams have proven they'll take a quarterback, or they have one already.
So I wanna like get one name out of the door, because this is like, it's just kind of annoying.
Former coach
of the
former Raider coach, if you will,
former Raider coach. And I would say this: if you are going to state that John Gruden should be a candidate for the Raiders job, you should have to read his emails that he wrote
out loud
on your platform. and he's not going to get hired by the Raiders. If like, think about it for a second. Take a deep breath and look at the situation. He wanted to come to the Raiders. Our minority order wanted to come to the Raiders with Gronk. And John Gruden said, I'm good. I'm riding with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's what you really think that you really think he's coming in to like to run the Raiders to bring back John Gruden? Like, come on, bro.
3.0.
3.0.
It's an absolute joke, and I will say right now that John Gruden is not going to be a head coach this year or maybe ever again.
No.
They're trying desperately because he's in the media now, and everybody's just dismissing it and sweeping it on the rug like they're like NFL and people of this caliber are prone to do. And so maybe there's some behind the doors, behind the scenes communication between the NFL execs and the NFL lawyers who's actually participating in this lawsuit and John Gruden's guys. And now maybe this is a situation where, well, maybe we can just sneak him back into the league and nobody will bring up the settlement that we made, 2 years ago or whatnot. So they're trying really hard. But if you just look at it as the merit of his resume, he's terrible. He's horrendous. Every single loss is, we didn't have this guy. This guy was injured, and we couldn't get going because this guy was hurt.
No accountability.
No self-reflection. Every time it just falls on me. It's like you only say that because you have a 10-year contract. Every time they lose, it's injury, it's game planning, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. And then we have the resume as an executive personnel director, which is the worst in all of football. He single-handedly put together the worst draft class in NFL history in 2020. They drafted Henry Ruggs at 12. They drafted Damon Arnette at 19. They had 3 third-round picks, and they didn't get a single starter out of any of them. 2 of them didn't even play a snap for the Raiders. That's the worst draft class in NFL history compared to who they could have had and what the other directions are. They drafted Henry Ruggs, first wide receiver taken in a draft that included CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. It's just a joke. They drafted Cleveland Farrell 4th overall. Like, John Gruden is absolutely an abysmal executive, and he's not very much better as a coach. You can make the argument if he was just solely a coach, he might be able to get something out of you. But have we heard any good stories come out of John Gruden that isn't out of Derek Carr's mouth over the last 5 years by any player whatsoever? No. It's just Derek Carr.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he wanted.
It's a joke. It is a joke that anybody's even mentioning him on TV.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny because when he refused Brady, it's funny how when you come to Bruce Arians, when he was presented with the opportunity, he was like he didn't care about getting credit. He was like, "Yo, if I can get a ring out of this, let's go. If I get 3 straight playoff appearances, let's go." Because that's all that really matters, and that's all that should matter as far as that goes. But when it comes to people like John Gruden, who are, who they are, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I think he will be a head coach. There's too many quality candidates who are gonna come in and do a thing here, and I think it's kind of silly to even
would
bring his name up.
Yeah, would literally anybody consider his second stint with the Raiders a success? Anybody at all? Would anybody consider?
But they're saying no. They're saying that he was building towards something. They were getting there.
Every week they were building it. We're building this thing up. 4 years of we're building this thing up.
Yeah.
We're building it. We're still building this. It's like, how long do you need to make the playoffs? How long do you need to win a playoff game? Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders are likely or has a real opportunity to win a playoff game this weekend. In the first year of their quote unquote rebuild, they're still building this thing, they won 12 games. Who saw the Commanders winning 12 games this year?
An offensive guru who hates young quarterbacks like that. That's what you want in today's day and age. It's what you want. Yeah. Oh my God. All right,
John Gruden would love this Raiders job because you give him Aiden O'Connell, who doesn't know his it's a helmet from his ass, in terms of that. It has no mobility and is the right shade of color.
I would say, okay. I would say, I do think there could be a chance if John Gruden was here that Brock Bowers would catch 150 balls.
Yeah,
I do think that's possible. That is possible.
Take Bowers in fantasy if
if
John Gruden is the coach.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, Raider Nation. Kind of an impromptu emergency podcast. I'm not sure if you got anything else. Solo,
I was going to say, do you want to do some prediction carousel for coaches since we're early in this process?
Let's get that loose. All right, let's go. So who you got? Who you got going to the Bears?
All right, so I'm going to take Ben Johnson to the Bears. I think that if the Cowboys fired McCarthy, and it looks like they're not going to because they denied Mike McCarthy an interview request from the Bears, I think Ben Johnson is going to go and reshape Caleb Williams in that offense, and I think they're going to be successful, and I'm excited for it. I'm here for it all.
All right, and then we have the Jags. What are we doing with the Jags? I agree with you with the Bears. So,
well, we'll switch off. We'll just go one out of the other, and you pick one.
I think the next one would probably be the Pats. I don't see how I can't as much as he has a relationship, I'm sure, with Richard Seymour, a relationship with Tom Brady. I just don't see how you could, and you know that here's the thing. You have the Patriots and Bob Kraft by the whats.
Yeah.
Because they just fired Gerard Mayo. So you have them by the balls in this situation. You have freedom, and you have a really good young quarterback. Miami is okay. They're not great. The Jets are a mess. And then and then you're only dealing with trying to split the season series with Buffalo. So yeah. I mean, I think there's enough there. I think you can have wide receiver free agents talk to AJ Brown about the experience of playing with you in Tennessee, like all those things like that, like how the management didn't want to let you go. So I would say that would be the one now that I would be looking at as far as Vrabel going to there. I know what Vegas says, but I still think he's going to go there.
They have a franchise quarterback, the 4th overall pick, like $85 million in cap space. They have really quality young defensive stars on that team. Yeah. And Mike Vrabel could have that team literally in a bad division aside from the Bills. And Mike Vrabel could likely have that team in the playoffs next year. It is a match made in heaven, and I think that's where he's going. I agree with you 100%.
I agree. And the Jags. You can do the Jags.
So this is an interesting one, but I think it's going to be Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores is going to go to the Jacksonville. I think it's going to be Jacksonville or the Saints. I'm taking the Jags in this situation. I think he's that stern, real good character building type of organization. I don't think he cares that Balky's going to be the guy. In that, I think he just wants another shot at the NFL. I think there's a lot of pieces on that team, especially on that defense, that he can work with a lot. Trayvon Walker is clearly not the right pick for them. They should have been Aiden Hutchinson. He's clearly the better player, but you can get a lot out of that team, and they have a lot of good young players that they can build around for that team. And you have Trevor Lawrence, in order right there. So you have the quarterback, you have the pieces on defense, you have the money, and you have an owner who's really desperate to win. He might not know how to win, but he's desperate to do that. So I'm going to take Brian Flores going to be the Jacksonville coach.
All right, and then who do we got? Who's next? What team's available now?
Saints.
The Saints. So the Saints, I would say, as much as it's still a mess financially, I would say the Jets are more of a mess. So I think that both jobs are hard because for a lot of reasons now, because now that the emergence of Penix and Young, that division could be really tough to win games in. Yeah, if you don't have a quarterback. But I'm gonna go with Aaron Glenn to with the Saints.
That's my favorite one that you said. The only reason why I took Jacksonville for Brian Flores because you mentioned the Aaron Glenn to the Saints thing earlier, and I just think that's a perfect fit. I think that's really perfect. Like I like Jesse Minter, and I like that idea of him going there. But man, Aaron Glenn just feels perfect. He feels like the perfect Saints head coach. It just feels right. No, I like that pick a lot. I think you're right. I think you're right on the money.
I'll give you the Raiders. Who do you think is going to the Raiders?
Oh God. Okay. Oh man, I'm gonna go Liam Cohen. I'm going to go offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they want to go offense. I think they want a young contemporary mind. I think they have a guy who is helped shape Baker Mayfield's resurgence in his career, along with obviously Dave Canales the year prior. But he's done enough to make Baker Mayfield a 40 touchdown passer. It's insane to think Baker Mayfield just threw over 40 touchdowns in a season. He's had injuries on that offense. He's transitioned from Rashad White, the incumbent running back, to a rookie who was one of the best rookie running backs in the league this year. Yeah. He's quality. He schemes well. His offensive line plays well. I think he'll have a vision for what he needs to do. If you can't get Ben Johnson, which I agree that most people, the consensus is that you're likely not going to get him if you're the Raiders. Mm-hmm. You bring in Liam Cohen, an offensive mind. You let him shape a bridge veteran, and then you work everything you can towards getting that quarterback for him. And you let him have Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, and you insulate that team with JPJ at center and Colt Miller at left tackle, DJ Glaze at right tackle. You find yourself a good guard in free agency. You have enough money to spend, and you go from there. I think it's going to be Liam Cohen.
And who's left? What teams are left?
The Jets.
The Jets.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is really tough. I'm glad you got it because it's really hard.
I would say this, as much as we said about I don't, and like some folks have said like maybe John Gruden to hear. I would say a couple of things about that. Number one, living in the East Coast for a while and knowing that the Vegas media is vastly different than the New York media, where you can't get away with saying, "Oh, we lost our backup safety," in the games and stuff like that. That wouldn't
leave it.
that wouldn't be a good work. I'm kind of crossing my eyes and thinking about maybe like a young and experienced guy. So I'm thinking maybe like a guy like Joe Brady.
Good game.
In the division. I know Rex Ryan is pounding the chest for the job on ESPN. I think
they can't go Rex Ryan, can they?
But
can they really do that?
But I think the problem with Rex was this: is that like I think Rex should have swallowed his ego a little bit and then became a defensive coordinator if you don't mean to get back in. So. I think that's going to be a young, inexperienced guy. I don't think people really. I don't think people really love this job, and I think that Brady might look at this as his only opportunity to get a job. So I think that I think that would be it. So just to wrap it up real quick, we got Bears going to get Ben Johnson, Brian Flores going to the Jaguars. The Patriots get Mike Vrabel. The Saints get Aaron Glenn. The Raiders get Liam Cohen, and the Jets get Joe Brady. So we'll see how that all works out and pans out over this period of time. I love this coaching stuff. That's my jam. I love it. I love it a lot. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the Raiders don't have to do this anymore for a while.
Maybe fingers crossed.
We can go. Can we check whoever the candidates are? Can we just have them like give their text messages and their emails over right now?
Just check them now.
Check them now. So
I will say this.
Comes out.
I haven't felt lower in a long time than I felt when the Raiders missed out or won those meaningless games and missed out on the top 2 pick 100%. Until yesterday when the Raiders did not fire Antonio Pierce. But today it feels like we got the number 1 overall pick and there's actually a semblance of hope and there's something that we can latch onto with Tom Brady that I think is a realistic option for us to be optimistic about. Someone who's going to be conducting and being the filter of the organization that's not Mark Davis. And that is a really good opportunity. And it just happens to be the greatest player in the history of the game, Tom Brady, who Mark Davis sought out in order to make this happen. Tom Brady did not seek out the Raiders to buy partner ownership. This is what I'm learning over the last week, is that Mark Davis solicited this relationship in order to make him an owner. And that's why the owners had an issue with him and the money issues, because Mark Davis wanted to sell him this for such a low cost that it did not appease well for the rest of the businesses of the NFL. But Mark Davis wanted this because I think Mark Davis doesn't want anything to do with the football operations anymore, and I think he wants to hand it off to someone that he feels is qualified. And Tom Brady may or may not be that guy, but he's a part of it now and probably indefinitely for the foreseeable future.
And I think for us as Raider fans, we just want to see some progress. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, but it's a progress, that part of it. And I think that one thing I want to say on the racial front is like, when you cry racism in this moment with Antonio Pierce, you make it very difficult when the NFL or in the sports world where there is racism, you know, when you're calling it out now when it's not really there, and then when it shows up in your face, then it's like people have an issue with it. He literally got one more game than Josh McDaniels. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just be 100%
and Josh McDaniels
real.
was a 5-time play calling, a Super Bowl winning play caller for the Patriots.
Somebody who had way more experience than him. He wasn't a good coach. He wasn't a good head coach, and it looks like a lot of the Belichick guys aren't good head coaches. But like, that's the thing that I think we really have to stop and get over it, and not act like this was like some malicious like setup. They literally gave a job to an individual with just the hope that person would actually be able to do the job. He didn't meet any of the criteria. He didn't have any of the experience. He wasn't a coordinator. He wasn't any of those things that you'd want for a head coach. He was just the right place at the right time and had the right voice. And now I think it's time for us to really stop the foolishness and just really realize that he wasn't the guy, and that's the reason why he's not the head coach.
You and I are both minorities. We both know what it's like to live in America as a minority. We both understand the microaggressions. We both understand certain things that happen to people of color, to our class, and to our races, and things of that nature. And to trivialize that, and to direct that towards us in that regard, considering we're fans of the most progressive team in the history of pro football, is a joke. And it spits in the face of people that actually deal with racism, that actually are racist, and a half dozen other terms we could go on, and platitudes, and people and demographics that we can go, considering what year we're in now. We could go in a lot of different directions to name all these things and to see what it really is in terms of what racism really is in terms of that. But to aim it towards people because we don't think someone's doing a good job as a coach, and you want to placate, people that are playing the victim and all that in order because you want to push this agenda that we're racist, or people are racist if they don't want Antonio Pierce. Are there racist people that probably don't want a black man as their coach? Absolutely. Just like there's probably people that don't want Robert Saleh as their coach and don't want, a half dozen others as their coach, Ron Rivera, or, you just take your pick. But this is not one of those situations where people don't like Antonio Pierce because he's black. People don't like Antonio Pierce because he's not good at his job, because he was underqualified, unprepared, and underexecuted as the main guy in charge. And he was just not good. And it's okay to say that this guy was not good. Was Josh McDaniels not good? No. And we wanted him gone basically 17 games into his career as the Raiders. It's the same amount of situations. If you're not good, it's pretty easy to tell if you're not good or not. Yeah. Did Getsy deserve another shot? Was it racism when he got fired? Was it racism when Urban Meyer got fired before he even got out of his first year of his job? Or Nathaniel Hackett? Or were these guys just really not good? I've watched football for 30 years. I think I can understand pretty quickly who's a good coach and who's not based on the results that they have, their speeches, their player testimonials, all these things that you can actually reference in order to see this. And if you're a rah-rah guy like Pierce was supposed to be, there are other components to that you have to hire well. You have to game plan well. You have to execute well. You have to prepare well. You have to conduct yourself well at the podium. You have to conduct yourself off of the podium. These are just not things that he's done in any job that he's had as head coach. Whether if you want to go back to Long Beach Poly or whether you want to go to Arizona State, these are not things that he's ever been able to be mature about in his career. It's just the way it is, and it's not because he's black. It's just because he's his own person. It's because he is this way.
It's because he was 9 and 17.
Yeah,
that's why he is not the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Simple as that. All right, so
15 of 19 games down by 2 scores in this season alone. Winless in the AFC West, a 10-game losing streak. Those are the facts.
0. 0.
None. No wins in the West
against the AFC West.
They went 13 straight games being down by 2 possessions that beat the franchise record by half a season. 8 games more than the franchise record. They were down straight games down by 2 possessions. It is not because he is black, I assure you. It is because he is not good at his job and he was underqualified for it. We have had disastrous teams in the past. We very rarely went winless in the West. We've won at least 1 game. To go 0-6 is unforgivable in the AFC West. It is inexcusable. It is not because of injury or quarterback. You were not good, flat out.
And listen, you could say he don't got a QB. I'll leave it on this one. You can say you don't have a QB. I would say for you to go compare the rosters of last year's Raider team and last year's Colts team, and then actually watch the Colts play last year with Gardner Minshew, who almost brought him to the playoffs. Like
coaching matters.
Coaching matters.
Coaching matters.
As the folks in Minnesota, coaching matters. Yeah, coaching matters.
Look, they won 14 games without a quarterback. How'd they do it?
Yeah, seriously. All right, folks. Thank you for watching. Signal Caller. We'll see you next time, and we'll talk about some quarterback stuff. And maybe if Drew Aller wins the national championship, hopefully he enters this draft because we need more quarterbacks in this draft.
Yes, sir.
All right, later.
See ya.